Pam Palmater is my guest. She's the Indigenous Governance Chair with Toronto Metropolitan University, TMU. Pam, good to have you with us on this Thursday. Thanks for this.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, what's your take on what we're seeing?
Oh, my goodness. Well, political words don't match the legislation. So on the positive front, yes, the Prime Minister should be meeting with First Nations. That's important in terms of the political relationship, but you cannot go by what a Prime Minister says. You have to go by the actual words and text of the legislation, which gives the Prime Minister and Cabinet unfettered power to decide which projects are in the national interest. And if they are in the national interest, then there's a presumption that they're going to go ahead no matter what. And you get to skip over certain environmental provisions. And there's no opportunity for a First Nation to say yes, no, or maybe yes with conditions. It's just a presumption that these projects will go ahead regardless of the environmental or human harm. And that certainly isn't constitutional and circumvents a whole host of environmental legislation, including the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which says very clearly free, prior, and informed consent.
I think it's important to say, and I know you would agree, that, it's not that Indigenous groups are saying, look, we're not interested in Canada becoming better and bigger and more of a power. It's just the idea of sort of, how we get from here to there and whether this is sort of rammed through or not, whether there's consultation or not. But let me be devil's advocate and say, if we're talking about trying to make things faster, is there a way to have both? Can we make things faster but also properly consult?
Oh, most definitely. Because, you're absolutely right. First Nations aren't saying no projects, no development, no economic interest. It really is, okay, we have to have the ability to assess, are these projects okay? There might be a project that'll cause so much damage to a water table or wipe out a species at risk that, no, that project can't go ahead. But maybe another project can if you have environmental mitigation and proper resource sharing with the local First Nation. And that's what's at stake here. It doesn't need to take 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to approve a project if the federal government and provincial governments are at the table now talking to impacted First Nations saying, okay, is this project viable? And if it is, what kind of mitigation measures do we need? And if it's okay after that, then how are we going to share the resources? That's what First Nations are talking about. It's not us that causes these delays. It's federal and provincial governments. When they don't come to the table, they make it a done deal and then say, oh, by the way, First Nations, we're going to do this. That's what causes these delays. And I think another really important point is the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls said very specifically that due to the high risk of violence and murders and disappearances around major extractive industry projects, Indigenous women need to be at the table to do that gender-based violence analysis. That hasn't even been mentioned here. And so these are the kinds of things that'll cause a delay if governments don't act right off the hop.
I gather the federal government, Pam, to be blunt, wants to avoid lawsuits, protests, blockades, as the case may be. I know you're a pretty keen observer as well of politics in this country. So can I ask you what you think of the job that Mark Carney has done so far? I know it's early going, but what you've heard from him, what you've observed.
Well, so far, if I'm just looking at it globally, I think he has responded to Donald Trump, generally speaking, very well by not just focusing on Donald Trump, by actually shoring up international allies, by shoring up international trade networks, and making sure that Canada is not 100% dependent on the United States for trade, political relationships, or international allyship in terms of military alliances. That's been exceptionally important. How he's been handling the conflict between Israel and Gaza, not good. We know right now there's a whole host of meetings happening around 40 plus countries saying we need to act as a world against any kind of genocide or crimes against humanity or any kinds of violence that's happening And Mark Carney has been woefully not present on that. But I think in terms of First Nations, this is going to be a test. Will he amend this legislation to make sure there's environmental and Indigenous protections? Or is he going to go ahead hoping that everyone, including Canadians, places trust in what a prime minister says versus what they enacted in legislation? And always, you have to judge a politician by their actions. And so, that's where it is right now.
Pam Palmater, the chair of Indigenous Governance at Toronto's Metropolitan University, TMU. Good to see you, Pam, as always. Thank you for taking the time for CTV.
Thanks, Todd.